Well, now that we have a new maritime frontier opening up to maritime activity, ships flying in waters that didn't beforehand, the resource agencies and stakeholders and residents want to know when those vessels arrive earlier than to just all of a sudden pop up over the horizon. And they can't keep a watch with a telescope or binoculars 24 hours a day. So this automatically monitors vessels and detects vessels when they enter a particular area of concern, and then notify the appropriate party the vessel's there and the type of vessel. I'm Ed Page. I'm the Executive Director for the Marine Exchange of Alaska, which is a nonprofit maritime organization down in Juneau that has a vessel tracking system that covers Alaska, including, of course, the Arctic. I think initially the natives who live up in the Arctic would call and say, where did this vessel come from? I had no idea it was coming. We're engaged in whaling operations. We need to know this when these vessels come to our area because they break the ice, and sometimes if we walk across the ice, we come back, we realize the ship came by and broke the ice where we just walked across. And we had to find a way to take this information that was available and get it into their hands and get the information to them so they can make informed decisions as to their whaling operations or other subsistence activities. The key components of this project is taking a phenomenal amount of information that's being generated from vessels operating in Arctic waters and being able to analyze that and sort it out to the needs of various stakeholders or interested parties. So for instance, Eskimo whalers have an interest in where vessels are as to whether it's going to impact their whaling operations. Likewise, the Fish and Wildlife Service is interested in where vessels are to protect endangered species or a walrus haul-out area, whatever. The Coast Guard is concerned about vessels' locations with respect to protected areas, environmentally protected areas, or safe sea lanes, and what have you. So each entity, organization, stakeholder has a different need for this information. So we're trying to sort that out and alert them when they have information relevant to them or of interest to them. We call that watchdogs.
My name is Shawn Butler. I'm a co-PI on this project with Captain Retired Buddy Custard. So I got involved in the project because I have a lot of experience with command and control systems, and I also have a very technical background in computer science. And I've actually worked on previous projects where we've used maritime AIS information to actually track ships in the Chukchi Sea. How the Coast Guard gets the information is primarily through the AIS system. All ships of a particular size have AIS systems that transmit their location at all times. And there's also additional data in that AIS information. So the Marine Exchange gets that information, and that you can track through the Marine Exchange. You can track ships all over the world. So we're particularly obviously interested in the Arctic, and so what we want to do is we want to be able to take that AIS information and then pair it with the idea of a georeference system so that we know when ships are in particular areas. So there's two components that drives the needs. One is the alert system is unique because we have ways of tracking ships, but we don't have ways of creating geospatial boundaries that are flexible and manageable so that we can bring them up or activate them and deactivate them, and then have an automated way of knowing when vessels are getting into those areas. So that's what's really missing, because we track vessels all over the world right now, but knowing when they're approaching a sensitive ecological area, for instance, that they're not allowed to be in, is very important. The second need that's driving this is that this is extendable to other agencies as well as these communities, because they have sensitive areas that the Coast Guard may not be particularly maybe interested in monitoring, but they would be interested in monitoring. So having that capability affects a lot of agencies other than the Coast Guard, as well as local communities that are interested in protecting their boundaries as well.
We've used a very rudimentary process in the past, which is more manually involved and not automated, when the Shell was engaged in drilling operation up in the Arctic. And they found out that there are many vessels work for them, but they didn't all get the word respected staying out of a protected area, and they got some violations for other vessels they had contracted with for going the wrong area. So they asked us to put in a watchdog system and where we could monitor vessels' operations, and as they approach an area they were not supposed to be in, we would call them on a satellite phone and tell them you're approaching an area, advise them of that, and they stayed clear. Similarly, we've done monitoring of vessels adherence to speed restrictions in Glacier Bay. Monitoring vessels was actually getting in a small boat with a radar gun and seeing how fast vessels were going to see if they're speeding or not. Well, that's something you can't do 24 hours a day or in inclement conditions. And so this was a matter of, they didn't have to worry about it. The email would come in if there was vessel speeding. And they didn't get any speeding because the vessels realized they're being watched 24 hours a day and they're going to get a ticket or alerted 24 hours a day, kind of like a traffic speed sensor on a highway that would send you a ticket automatically. It would influence one's behavior. So part of this is actually incentivize or vessels complying with the restrictions, that actually someone is, when the restrictions imposed, it's going to be monitored and then be notified if they don't comply with the restriction. What we're going to do is give an opportunity to people who have a need for information on vessels to actually get on a website and prescribe what they want to see. So for instance, they can say, we have concerns about the walrus haul-out area, and that we don't have vessels within 5 miles of the area. We want to know if vessels enter that area or approach that area so we can notify them to stay clear. But they get on a website that ties into the Coast Guard, who has all this information available to them, and they can say, this is the area, the parameters, the geographic position. These are the type of vessels I'm concerned about. I want all vessels or just vessels over 100 feet or just fishing vessels. And when they enter or approach this area, I want the notification to go to this text message or this email address. And then we can take appropriate action. The first time, they're going to really be able to dictate and prescribe the information they want and ensure that it's going to be automatically provided, not have to worry about tasking some individual to actually watch a screen 24 hours a day and pick up the phone and call them when a situation happens. It's going to be automated.
The first part of that project is to figure out a way to define those areas. Who gets to define those areas? How can they be defined? How flexible they are? Are they? Do they change with time? The area could change given some time period. It may be in one location on one date, but later on it needs to move to a different date depending on the activities. And so you need an alert system, and you need a way of defining what those areas are. And then the third component to it is a way to subscribe to it in such a way that you only get the information that you're interested in, not overwhelmed with every alert of every sensitive area of every ship in every area.
What's unique about this project, we're taking new technology that's been adopted internationally, and we're now taking and squeeze as much value as we possibly can out of this vessel tracking system that has been developed and implemented. And in fact, in some cases, some vessels have not even installed this equipment but 2 years ago because it wasn't required beforehand. So we really have new information, and we're really trying to take advantage of this maritime domain awareness and move it into the scheme of maritime domain management. The challenge for the Coast Guard, which has always had a full portfolio in Alaska, which is the largest maritime region, that opening of the Arctic just makes their job more complicated and more challenging. And this is a tool for the Coast Guard to take this new sea lanes and new maritime activity and have a better handle on using that information on vessels to better manage the environmental protection requirements of opening a new maritime frontier in a very environmentally sensitive area. Ensure that we have safe, efficient, environmentally sound maritime operation. So it's a tool that really introduces technology to deal with this tremendous increased workload they're taking on.